Good morning and or afternoon and or evening, Ori and the Blind Forest fans. I am so happy to be joining you for another race today. I am HydraSR. Who am I joined by today?
You are joined by Loopy Lou, and Loopy is excited to be here. We've got a very nice race coming up, Seed 16 versus Seed 17. Both close runners in terms of recent consistency and both very good runners indeed. Hydra being one of the best, showing his skills in a former GDQ in a four-way race and showing that he was top dog then. Definitely a person to be reckoned with.
Absolutely, and he'll be going up against Richard today, another formidable runner himself. One of the stronger controller runners. He is one of the guys who really sticks to it. Even though it says hybrid there, he only uses keyboard and mouse for a couple of very specific places. He definitely prefers the movement on controller and uses a cool method for a trick called double bashing, involving rebinding his analog stick and doing it side to side quickly to hit a very specific timing window. We can talk more about that later. Looks like his miscellaneous notes mentioned he reached 100 wins on Tetris 99 this morning. So I guess that answers the question of how much has he been focusing on Ori.
Well, it shows that he's on a win streak. Hopefully, he can continue it here. Now, I think it's important to note that this seems to be a bit of a grudge match. Apparently, last year it was Hydra that knocked out Richard. That said, Hydra was then, following on from that, upset by Monkley, who is of a similar skill rating to Richard. So it's definitely going to be close.
Yeah, and Hydra had mentioned prior to the race a combination of nerves and that he hasn't been practicing all that much either. So that could translate into some mistakes that'll leave the window open for Richard to sneak in. He would be considered the underdog here, but not by a gigantic amount, that's for sure.
Definitely, and races are underway any second now on screen.
All right, so while we're getting started here, I imagine most people who are watching are familiar with Ori and the Blind Forest, but just in case you're not, we are playing a Metroidvania here. It's kind of game where you explore around, you find skills that increase your movement abilities, and that opens up progressively more and more areas of the game. Very, very fun exploration-based game. Fortunately, all these runners are very experienced and know exactly where to go. This game has been quite thoroughly routed, and we're going to see some really fast, really cool tech here from these runners today.
Yeah, following on from that, this is the definitive edition of the game, which released exactly 1 year later than the original. So we're going to be seeing some new areas and new skills, specifically Black Root Burrows.
Yeah, and you can see right off the bat, Hydra, maybe as a way to combat some nerves, was using a cool little color code. It's a sequence of buttons you can do to give Ori a random color. Gave himself like a nice bright fuchsia there. A lot of runners find that when they're having a lot of nerves, just doing something fun like that can help, get their mind off the stress of the race.
And certainly look fabulous while doing so.
All right, so we've come up to technically the first skill of the game. This is the all skills category. We're going to have to collect all of them in the game before we're allowed to finish, and that's most of what we're going to be spending our time doing. This first one is a sort of companion character called Sign. And what does Sign do?
Sign allows you to attack, as you're seeing here, against these Fronkies. Now, both runners trying to attack really quickly, and both succeeding very well to be able to keep running while killing those Fronkies without stopping.
Yeah, that's harder than it looks. That requires some pretty specific timing because after firing 2 shots in quick succession, Sign has a bit of a cooldown period. So, knowing the timing on that and getting your 2 shots out as fast as possible takes a little bit more practice than you might think. Both players getting some really nice movement through here. The first time you pick up any of these pickups that enemies drop, Ori has a little bit of dialogue and an animation. And so they're trying to avoid them as long as possible to get farther enough into the game where it will no longer play those cutscenes for them if they can. Those little orange orbs they're dropping, that's like experience to get level ups, which we'll talk a little bit more about what level ups do in a minute once it becomes relevant.
In the meantime, you may be seeing our runners take intentional damage. It is intentional because we're going to die here for a trick known as Ghost Door, which allows you to enter the keys to the door, set up a save, die, reload at the save, and the door will think it's already animated and allow you to run through without waiting for it to do its slow opening animation.
To quote the legendary Spike Vegeta, in the Ori community, we would literally rather die than watch a door open.
Sad but true. Both
Alright, so
going up for that health cell. They're running 4 HP right now.
Yeah, and so we're going to need to collect a grand total of 5 at a bare minimum due to some damage boosts at the end of the run. It is a little bit faster to skip this health cell now because there are some other health cells we can take later that are a little faster. But by taking this one now, we get that extra safety health for a lot of the run. And I would say the majority of runners in this tournament are going to opt for that just because it's only a few seconds time loss in exchange for a lot of safety. So you saw Richard on the right hand there dipping back to pick up some extra experience. It's because our runners want to do a timed level up. You can see Richard, when he leveled up there, a big wave of energy went out and destroyed all of those brambles and the enemies around them. That's one of the effects of leveling up in this game, is that energy wave goes out and does a lot of damage. So we'll be doing a few timed level ups for that. The other effects of leveling up are it refills all of our health and energy, and it gives us points we can spend to sort of upgrade our skills, which that will come into play a little bit later.
Unfortunately, in a similar vein, it sounds like and looks like Hydra's XP is just a tad too low, so he won't even be able to level up on the way back, which is surely his intention. Unfortunately, this means he won't get the time level up he wants, and he will have to shoot the brambles slightly, resulting in a bit of a time loss.
Yeah, and that'll catch Richard up just a little bit. Hydra's movement has been a little bit cleaner, so he's been slightly ahead here. But you can see now, because he had to stop and shoot those brambles, they're basically back to neck and neck. Hydra's maybe just a step or two ahead.
Indeed. Now, coming up, there is another important trick that you'll be seeing throughout the entirety of the run called Save Anywhere. In this trick, our runners will open up the ability menu where you purchase abilities, but glitch it out so that you can move in the background. In doing so, they can buy an ability whenever they please, and buying an ability causes the game to save. So, movement combined with saving whenever you want means you can save anywhere. This is done a lot to skip cutscenes and other whole host of shenanigans, so you'll see that a lot throughout this run.
All right, so we might be seeing a small deviation here. Yeah, you saw Hydra went to the left to pick up an experience orb, and Richard did not. This is indicative that Hydra is likely going to be doing what's called the slime genocide route in this area we're going into. There's a bunch of slimes that drop a lot of experience, but there's also one big orb that has 100 experience in it. So Richard is going to be opting to take the time to go grab that orb. Hydra is going to instead be trying to collect the same amount of experience by killing enemies along the way. And theoretically, I think Slime Genocide with all the optimizations is just a hair faster, but maybe a little bit more difficult to pull off correctly. So we'll see which of these two guys comes out ahead on that exchange.
Important to note, both runners grabbing Magnet through when doing the Save Anywhere trick to skip the cutscene. So neither of them deviating with any fancy, scary, extra decisions here.
So look at the right-hand screen. You can see Richard is taking the time to stop and get this orb. This is the one that Hydra is skipping in exchange for having to kill all of the slimes in here. So you can see it's pretty comparable amount of time one way or the other. Hydra's just trying to cut one extra cycle of bobbing platforms here by not stopping for that orb.
And does get the cycle pretty well, as far as I can tell.
Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good on both ends. The lasers that Richard is going through here are instant kill, but both players are experienced enough to recognize what those cycles look like, and they manage to avoid dying there quite nicely. This area is a bit notorious, and a lot of runners don't like it just because you can see how slowly we have to go through here. You have to carry this orb through, which really limits your movement. You just kind of have to ride on these slow platforms. But in exchange for going here, we're going to be rewarded with a very, very fast skill once we get to our next tree. You want to tell us about it?
Oh, before I tell you about it, a quick note, Hydra unfortunately just missed that platform cycle, so giving another quick edge for Richard to even up the score a little bit. But yes, the dash skill is an incredible skill added in the Definitive Edition that allows runners to zoom across the screen. They can also do interesting things like dash glides, which is a jump, a specific type of jump allowing you to conserve momentum, and just allows for speedy antics.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's one of the biggest aspects for what allows us to go fast in this game, especially when we'll be using our level up points to upgrade it and make it even faster later on. You'll very quickly, as soon as you see them get the dash tree, be able to just visually see how important that skill is for our runners. We're seeing that Save Anywhere trick you mentioned earlier used to skip a cutscene here, and then we will be moving on to our next skill. We'll have to, to get into this next area, though, we'll have to use a trick called the Frankie Walk to do a sequence break. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Frankie Walk. We have a nice little friend named Billy up top, which we are going to lure down and provoke into chasing us. The reason we do so is because there is an energy door to the right that requires 4 energy to open. Now, thankfully in this game, when you level up, it blesses you with restoring your health and energy to full. We exploit that by using it to open this 4 energy door when we only have 2 maximum energy. We do this by entering our 2 energy, then leveling up with the energy still in the door, regaining 2 energy from the level up, and then entering that as well, resulting in a total of 4 energy and opening the door.
And that does mean that our runners have been having to very carefully monitor their experience so that they're within 1 Franki's worth of experience of leveling up right now. That's something that kind of becomes second nature to runners eventually, but it is definitely a skill that requires some practice. Now, you might be asking, how do you know that you have 2 energy and or what your experience amount is? You can see at the bottom of Richard's screen, his UI is there, which shows health and energy, but it's not showing on Hydra's. There is a hotkey you can use to turn off the UI, which generally our runners are going to do just because. Oh no!
A massive
That's
death from Hydra.
gigantic. That is a very large death, unfortunately.
We call that area Death Gauntlet for a reason.
Yeah, no question about it. Because we had to put both our 2 energy we'd start with and the 2 energy from the level up into the door, there's no energy to save. So you have to go through a pretty extended, dangerous sequence. And Hydra, unfortunately, got caught up in those brambles, died, and had to go all the way back to Dash Tree, which gave Richard a pretty large lead here, actually.
Yeah, that is always a tense area for runners until you get the safety save down after grabbing the energy. Because of the energy requirements of the Frankie Walk, you don't get the opportunity for a safety save.
And Richard over on the right-hand side is now into an area known as Moon Grotto. This was a pretty large sequence break with the Frankie Walk. You're supposed to come to this area much later, but we're coming here to get a skill called Double Jump, which we'll be coming up to shortly on Richard's screen. While we're waiting for him to do that, let's just make sure Hydra gets through this dangerous area safely. Looks like he's passed most of the dangerous stuff. I think he should be okay to move on here.
Now we're seeing some blind movement to your right. You may be noticing there is no Ori on that screen. That's because through using a save and then quitting during the tree animation, we're able to move while it animates. And getting really quite far during that animation. Good beginning of the ascent there while blind.
Oh, so our truck is pointing out to us. Oh, sorry. Yes, please explain what just happened over there.
I was just going to mention that Hydra got a really difficult cycle, the Grotto cycle, or otherwise referred to God cycle. It's you have to move very perfectly to get through that little gap, and it can result in death if you mess it up at all. So very well done from him.
And Richard very quickly got a nice clean little sequence break as well. It was a fancy little double jump. You probably wouldn't have even noticed as a sequence break unless you knew about it. It requires a precise double jump off of a wall, and it skips an extended section way off on the left-hand side of Grotto here. Just cuts maybe like 30 seconds to a minute worth of movement out, but got it very quickly and cleanly first try. Richard is actually on great pace here. Our truck is informing us that he was only 4 seconds behind his PB at the double jump tree. So not only is he in great position in this race, but he's actually doing quite well relative to his own best run as well.
Yeah, unfortunately Hydra taking another few deaths before double jump. This may be the aforementioned nerves getting to him, but he's been through nerves before in many situations and has recovered, so he's still moving excellently and approaching his own Grotto skip.
Yeah, I mean, when Hydra
tries smoothly.
Very nice. When Hydra is on point, there are a few runners on this world who have better movement than him. So if he can get these nerves under control, he's going to be able to eat into a lot of this delta here. But that's going to require maybe Richard to make a mistake or two, and it's going to require Hydra to calm down and stop taking these deaths, which he's definitely capable of, but we'll see if he's able to dig deep into that reserve of willpower and pull it out.
Now, we're seeing OG Richard, I should say, going up and grabbing that ability cell. I believe that's something that Hydra will not be doing due to a difference in routing. Richard going for a terror break and Hydra going for the crazy juggle, I believe. So that's something we'll get to later, but worth noting now that that's a slight loss of time by grabbing that ability cell, comparatively. Yeah,
and so Richard there took a little bit of time to go to a teleporter. We'll be using those to come back to this area at the end of the game because conveniently this teleporter is actually the closest one that we'll have access to the very end of the game. So once it's time to come back and go to the final dungeon, that's what we'll be using. Looks like there was a 56-second delta between our runners right now. So that is a lot, but it's not unheard of to be able to make that up, especially as the run goes on. we really need our energy for ways to go fast, and we can't spend it on safety saves without losing a lot of time. So the run just gets more and more dangerous, and the time losses get larger and larger. So 56-second delta can evaporate just in the blink of an eye as this run continues onwards.
Now Richard beginning the Ginzo tree while Hydra approaches. Richard doing some nice vertical movement there, getting around the Gamers, not falling into a pit of despair. Good movement. I think it is important to note, I don't think we've mentioned this yet, both runners are watching each other's streams while running, so they are both very well aware of how close each other is and who is in the lead at any point, assuming they're checking.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they've at least been glancing over every once in a while. And so when it comes to Hydra's position, you got to wonder, you know, is seeing exactly where he's at, is that calming him down because he knows where he is, or is it making him more nervous because he knows he's behind, things like that. You can see on his left-hand side, in this room that Hydra's in, Richard just kind of like jumped between these square platforms. Hydra did a cool trick called telehopping there, where you refresh your double jump by going through those teleporters and just kind of go up the sides of the room. It is faster if you get it cleanly, but he did have a few flubs on it, so probably didn't actually end up saving himself any time with it, but it does look really cool.
Meanwhile, Richard fighting the first mini-boss of Ginzo. A mini-boss that you can tell where it's going to reappear with a one-frame tell if you keep your eye open, though it can be easy to miss. And survives it, nice clean. 6 cycle, which isn't the fastest, but it's still pretty fast, so good job from Richard.
Yeah, you can generally expect to get a 5 cycle if you have clean shot pacing. It is possible with really, really incredible technique to get a 4 cycle, and Hydra is one of the few people to have gotten a 4 cycle mini boss in a race, so he is capable of it. But it's not likely to come up more than maybe once.
Okay, so while Hydra fights his mini boss, Richard is grabbing the bash ability, a very unique ability to Ori and the Blind Forest. Would you like to tell them about that one, Roos?
Sure, I think Bash is kind of the defining ability of Ori and the Blind Forest, just because it makes up so much of the tech in this game. As you can see on Richard's screen, Bash allows you to grab onto projectiles, enemies, and certain environmental triggers, and you launch yourself in one direction and you launch the object in the other. And this is useful just because you really you launch yourself quite quickly, so it's a good speed ability. It refreshes your jumps so you can stay airborne for a long time. It just like drastically increases your mobility, and it's a lot of fun because it encourages you to sort of live dangerously because you speed yourself up by being close to enemies to bash them. So it makes movement in this game quite exciting.
Yeah, it definitely changes your perspective of the world once you receive that ability. Anyway, meanwhile we're talking about Bash, Richard is also going for another trick known as key duplication, where we enter keys into a door but don't open it, have a safe far enough away and die. The keys get refunded into our inventory but also respawned in the world, allowing us to duplicate them and get extra keys.
And, you know, Richard didn't fail it, but he did have a little bit of slow movement getting up to the right areas a few times. So this is an opportunity for Hydra to eat into that delta a bit if he has a quick, clean key dupe, which his movement is looking quite confident now. I feel like the nerves from being behind are starting to go away, and Hydra knows, okay, I've got to play a clean run to catch this up. He knows what to do. He's got lots of practice. He's a very experienced runner, and he's starting to put in that work. So the mini boss that Hydra is fighting here, typically this opens the way into what's one of the most fondly remembered sections of the game by anybody who's played it casually. It's a very cool escape sequence from this tree where a huge floor of water is chasing you, and you have to quickly get through enemies and everything to avoid getting caught by it. But unfortunately, we will not be seeing that section. In the current route, we actually just leave by this teleporter and continue on to find some other skills. So unfortunately, we won't see that section. Hopefully somebody can find a way to route the Ginso escape back in and make it faster, because, man, that was such a cool section.
It does mean that the water is never cleaned also, so keep that in mind. Water does do damage. And meanwhile, on our right, important to note, we're having a swamp entry trick here from Richard, where we're using this frog and his shots to break these floors and ceilings that we're not meant to be able to go through yet, allowing us to arrive into swamp, where you should end up after doing the aforementioned Ginzo escape, which we are skipping.
Yeah, so this trick that we're doing with the frog is kind of like replacing the fact that the Ginso escape would have brought us into this area. So this was what allows us to skip that water sequence and get into the stomp tree, which we're going to see from Richard here shortly. Stomp is it's not a flashy ability, but it is very important as part of the puzzle. One, because we just need it to be able to finish the game, and two, it's going to allow us to access the full potential of our upgraded dashes later, which we'll explain when we get there. But in the meantime, all it's really useful for at this point is breaking floors, and it allows you to like quickly get to maximum velocity downwards. Like you can see, anytime they need to get downwards quickly, like Richard just did there, he's going to stomp because it lets you drop quite fast.
Very much so. And now we're going to be seeing the return on the right-hand side of our frog friend that we've named Ringo for an audio feature that we'll be seeing soon. We're using this frog to grab an ability cell that is otherwise difficult to reach and we need for XP purposes. So, Richard seems to get it well.
I would like to point out that at the Stomp tree, there was only a 14-second delta, so Hydra is definitely eating into this lead that Richard has. Richard's going to either want Hydra to take another mistake, or he's just going to really need to play clean and not miss anything. Speaking of missing things, Richard is attempting a cutscene skip here for a pretty long cutscene. He unfortunately did not make it. What you're trying to do is use the bash to pull yourself through a cutscene trigger on that frog right there. Didn't quite make it. Hydra's going for it here as well. He also fails it, unfortunately.
So that was a potential leads change, but both runners watching the bird.
Yeah, and I think this cutscene is about 17 seconds or so. So if Hydra had gotten that, that definitely would have been the lead swap, but it's just going to stay the same. It's looking like maybe about a 10 to 15 second delta here still.
Oh, death from Richard, accidentally not feeling comfortable with that spider bash and falling into the spikes because the shot was not playing kind to him. Does send him back before the Kura cutscene skip. Does get it this time though.
Then that's really nice that he got it the second time, because if he was forced to watch it again, suddenly that 17 seconds is doubled to 34 on top of the time loss of the death. So it really would have put him quite a bit behind. So it's definitely not where Richard wants to be, but it's not, you know, completely catastrophic just yet.
That does put Hydra in the lead.
So Hydra has come to the Charge Flame tree. This is not a skill you're really going to be seeing, maybe, you know, once or twice at most. It's just kind of like a charged up shot that you would do instead of your regular lasers. It can be used to break a few like barriers, like blue colored barriers, but we have other ways to break all of those as well. So we just really are not going to be seeing Charge Flame. We're only grabbing it because of the fact that it's a skill, and we have to get all of those to be able to finish the game, at least in this category.
Yep. Hydra heading into Valley now, while Richard is holding up a save anywhere to try and skip a quite long cutscene that we'd rather avoid. Does get a dash glide over the Spirit Wall, which avoids a slow zone, which are left from the remnants of cutscenes that make Ori walk slowly.
I would like to point out the section that both of our runners are in is one of the highest potentials for time loss in the entire run, because we need every bit of energy we have. The next skill we're going to get is not a tree, it's a feather, and it doesn't actually refill our energy. So we don't get that free energy refill we've been relying on so far. So no safety saves for a long time, and we're in some pretty dangerous territory. Hydra here is going for a trick called Fast Stompless. He's going to grab onto this spider shot, launch it to the left towards some rocks we need to break, and he's going to quickly race over here to unload some rocks that are in his way and attempt to grab this cell. If he does it all right, he'll grab the cell, and then the shot breaks these rocks. So that was a nice sequence break. He doesn't have to go up and stomp those rocks himself, and kind of like layers his tasks at once. He both collects the cell and breaks the rocks at the same time. So well done from Hydra there.
Meanwhile, Richard throwing down a save and switching to keyboard and mouse for his attempt at this trick. It's much harder on controller, so he elects to switch to KBM for this. His first shot is too high, but he's going to be trying again. He does notice. Second shot he feels comfortable with. He's got a race to the right, as we've mentioned. Get a good spider shot. And gets it as well.
Well done, well done. I was watching Richard stream prior to the race, and he was having a lot of trouble with that Fast Stompless trick, so you know he's got to be breathing a sigh of relief to get through that one.
For sure. Now you may have seen another deadly trick from Hydra's screen on the left called Sorrow Bash, the envy of new runners, where you have to lead a bird and yourself through a spiky cavern of death. More importantly, there is currently a trick happening known as Crazy Juggle.
Yeah, so Hydra is having to juggle this frog up. I would note that the timing on these charge dash and then canceling with a stomp, it's only 2 frames every time he does that. And if he misses a single one, it will kill the frog. So every single time he rushed up to the frog like that, it was a 2-frame window. and he managed to get every single one. So very nicely done there. That is, because he got to skip the cell that Richard got way back at the Genso tree. This method is the faster way to get through Sorrow, but it's also much more difficult as well. What we're going to be seeing from Richard, on the other hand, is a slightly different sequence through this area that involves a much easier way to break the roof up at the top that Hydra used the frog for.
Yeah, so this route difference may make it appear that Richard's in the lead by going to the left first, but don't forget he does have to go up top to get the Sunstone after coming to this tree.
Yeah, and that Sunstone, that's the key to get into the final dungeon, which Hydra has already collected. Takes a bit of a death there. Fortunately, due to his dashing abilities, it's not going to take him too long to get back there, but, you know, every bit of time loss it counts. I think there was only a 33-second-ish delta entering Sorrow. So, you know, that 15-second death right there definitely eats into it a bit.
Yeah, this race is still both parties' race, for sure. Close race so far.
So we haven't talked about Charge Dash at all yet. You want to go over that real quick, Loopy?
So Charge Dash is an amazing upgrade to Dash, which homes onto enemies and deals damage to them, is the intended use of them. However, we mostly use it for speed, and if you... See, Charge Dashes cost 1 energy to use, so you're theoretically not able to do it much with 5. However, cancelling a Charge Dash with a Stomp or with a Bash stops the energy from costing anything, and you get it refunded. So we're doing a mixture of Charge Dashes and Stomps, or Charge Dashes into Bashes, for you to move quickly without costing any energy.
So Hydra is now coming into Misty Woods, definitely a fan favorite of most runners because we have all of our fast movement skills now and we get to show them off now. Just like, look at how freaking fast Hydra gets to go here. It's absolutely one of the most fun areas of the game. But what you're going to see him do is use uncanceled charge dashes to kind of burn his way down to 1 energy, and then after that he's going to preserve that 1 energy by using those canceling techniques over and over until he gets an energy refill from the climb tree, which is halfway through, and is really the only reason we're coming into Misty here is to collect that skill.
Now you may occasionally notice the runners fly across the screen in seemingly absurd ways. That is using a trick known as rocket jump, which is just simply a charge dash that is cancelled halfway through a jump, I believe, which confuses the game and makes it forget to slow down your momentum, so you can go flying as you just saw Richard do on the right there.
Hydra's movement is looking very confident here. He's not taking safety saves, and he's doing a lot of risky charge dashes and things to speed up his movement through here. Richard really flying through here as well, but Hydra is showing off some of those, you know, slightly riskier, slightly more difficult strats that are that separates, you know, a runner like Richard and a runner like Hydra, who's one of the tippy top runners. So if Hydra can continue this movement without making any huge mistakes, he should be able to close out this race as we get closer and closer to the end here. So Hydra, when he got to that last tree, he picked up the climb skill. It's not going to make very much of an appearance. It's just a way to hold onto walls. Ooh, I will get back to that in a minute, but Hydra accidentally burned up all of his energy there, so he doesn't have access to those charge dashes or to those rocket jumps until he refills, which he fortunately does right now, but this is less energy than he's going to be used to here, so he may have to change up his energy usage routing just a little bit here.
Yeah, could cause issues in the upcoming quote-unquote mini-boss.
So the delta between our runners at the climb tree was 36 seconds in Hydra's favor, which still not that much. There are plenty of ways that Hydra could lose more than 36 seconds here, so he's going to have to continue to play clean if he wants to close this out.
Now, Hydra getting a level up completely negates all worries about energy, is back on form exactly where they are used to being.
Yeah, and he got it from the experience he got from killing a mini-boss, which you may not have even seen on your screen. Thanks to Charge Dash and some of our other skills, he was able to like just absolutely evaporate that mini-boss, no problem. You'll see Richard on your right-hand side coming up to that boss as well. Let's see if he can match that quick one cycle as well. He uses a slightly different technique. He goes to the right one and then the left one, and I believe that one is just, you know, a second or two slower, but still gets that one cycle, so very, very good work from his part.
Now, on your left, you see Hydra entering lower black route. Intentional death there to trick a door into opening when you're expected to hold a lever. And now is racing against these insta-death lasers, trying to do some perfect movement. Does get caught off on some spikes. Goes for it anyway and dies!
All right,
Nothing.
so given that Richard has been keeping up with his pace and keeping that roughly 35-second delta, anything that Hydra messes up here is costly. You know, oh goodness, his movement is a.
Oh
Oh,
my
he takes
god!
another one. Oh my goodness.
Okay, closing the gap here is Richard. Some scary stuff. These lasers hold they hold no prisoners.
Yeah, looks like he gets through it this time, but Richard is right on his tail now. I mean, Hydra cannot afford any more big deaths, and Richard is playing so cleanly. You know, this is. I don't want to like diss on Richard at all by saying this, but this is a bit of a tortoise and the hare situation where Hydra, maybe his movement is faster, but he is taking more mistakes and just giving Richard a chance to just like, calmly and safely catch up this time and stay in this race.
Hydra showing another useful trick runners know called the grenade jump, if you'd like to explain that one for people.
Yeah, so grenade jump is going to be a combination of 3 of our skills. We're going to be using climb on the wall, charge jumps to start our momentum, and then you're going to use a grenade that we just got to interrupt the charge jump. And it forgets to decelerate you, so you're just going to like fly ridiculously fast off of the wall. And unfortunately, we only get it right here at the end, so you won't see too many of them, but it is going to be very important for a cutscene skip right at the end that's going to save us a lot of time. But Hydra may show off a few others as well on the way to the final dungeon here.
As might Richard.
So 20-second delta between the two runners as of right now. You can see Richard taking a second to collect a health cell. We do need 5 because, as you mentioned earlier, the water is not clean anywhere in the world because we skipped that Ginso escape. That means that there is some water in the final escape that the runners are going to have to swim through, and you're going to take, at a minimum, 4 damage. So 5 health is the absolute minimum you can complete the run with. And that is what Hydra is going with here, is 5. Richard may stop to collect the 6th if he's feeling unconfident. Nope, looks like he's going with 5. Both of these runners are putting it all on the line, saying they can make the swim with only 4 damage. So that's if either one of them drowns in that water and dies, that will definitely cause a huge lead change.
Yep. Now coming up to another trick known as door warp, a 1-frame necessary trick that is done expertly by Hydra. You must enter the door on the first frame it loads, and it wrong warps you to the wrong location. Now heading into the final escape.
Alright, so because we need all of our health for that swim, any damage that either of these runners takes in the final escape is lethal, and they will have to kill themselves and start the escape over, which is very costly. There's a lot of lava, a lot of rocks, a lot of spikes here, so a lot of danger. Richard also gets a first try door warp as well, so that's absolutely what he needed to keep himself in this. He's going to need to rely on Hydra to take a death, or potentially soft lock. I mentioned the final grenade jump can be used to skip a cutscene. The runners definitely need to go for it. But if your positioning on the grenade jump is a little bit off, you can soft lock your game and have to redo the entire final escape. So if Hydra soft locks or dies here, Richard is suddenly back in the lead. Okay, Hydra taking his swim on the left hand here.
Oh, get
no! That's the lead change! That's the lead change! Hydra drowned in the water, unfortunately. His movement was not quite good enough. Richard is ahead here. If he can close out this cleanly, he will take the win.
Important to note, if either of them doesn't get the grenade jump and has to go through casually, that is also the time it takes. It's not only a death or a soft lock, there are potential errors possible.
Richard dies in the water too! Okay, left hand side, let's watch Hydra. He also took some accidental damage. Richard is, oh no, but Richard takes damage too! What is happening right now? My brain is exploding.
Oh my god. Both of them are watching each other's streams. They both know what's happening here, and the tension is high for everyone.
Their heart rates must be 500 easily. Like, they both know that it's at any second, one of them could get through this. I've never seen this much spaghetti on the final escape by both runners before. This is incredible. Hydra coming up to a swim on the left-hand side. Didn't quite feel right about those fish positions. He gets out. Okay, Richard also gets out as well. Okay, it's going to come down to who gets their grenade jump first. They are frame tied. This is insane. Okay, let's watch. Hydra gets his grenade jump. Oh my goodness.
That was a fast setup on the grenade jump from Hydra, and it looks like that's without a soft lock. Richard gets his.
That was nerves of steel from Hydra to so quickly go into that grenade jump. If he had soft locked, that almost certainly throws away the race. But Richard, unfortunately, took 3rd try grenade jump, is going to be taking 2nd in this. But wow, what a finish!
That was insane. I knew this race was gonna be close, but that was, I don't think close can possibly begin to describe it.
You really can't get much closer than that. I mean, they were frame tied floating up to that grenade jump there. That was mind-boggling.
GG from both runners. Hydra getting a 32.42, Richard getting a 32.52. There was 10 seconds.
10 seconds is big, but I feel like that doesn't even tell the story of how close this was. I mean, 1 second would have been bigger than the differential between the two of them, literally steps before the end. That was ridiculous.
It all came down to the final grenade jump.
That may have been one of the best finishes to an all skills race I've ever seen. Oh my god.
That was very hype. Beautiful run. Beautiful showing from both runners. Richard and Hydra both plenty of reasons to be proud of themselves in this tournament race. Nerves were high and they both executed with extreme smoothness here.
But let's talk about the skill level of these runners. I mean, they both had some spaghetti, but still came out of this with, mid to high 32s, which is a respectable time. Like, even people with, if you had a 32-42 PB, like that's a fairly experienced runner. So to pull that out with this much spaghetti in a race just shows how skilled both of these guys are.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we'll wait to see if we can hear from either of these runners on if they're interested in doing an interview. In the meantime, Hydra will be moving on. So, as expected, he was the favorite to win here, but I don't think anybody expected it to be quite that close or that exciting. So you can see the bracket get pulled up here. Hydra taking the win over Richard. He's going to move on to face Ronnie in the round of 16, which, Hydra is happy to win this, but can't be too happy to find out that that's his opponent next.
Definitely showing they have the potential to win, though. Ronnie, certainly a top runner, top seeded runner, and top all-time runner, having the second best personal best on the leaderboards. Just overall, it's going to be a tough opponent, but one that it's not going to be a lopsided race.
Yeah, if there's anybody who can beat Ronnie in a race, Hydra would be among that very short list. So we could definitely see yet another upset there if Hydra can pull out an awesome run. So we have heard that we're going to get an interview from our racers once they're both ready. Looks like I see them on deck, so they might be ready to get pulled in here shortly. And I'm sure both of them have quite a few thoughts to let us know exactly how that went.
Yeah, and here they come now. GG's Hydra and condolences Richard, but congratulations on an amazing race.
Yo, thanks. GG Richard.
GG Hydra. I love you.
I love you too, man.
Yeah, I think GG is all around. So, I mean, I think you have to know what we want to talk about first, that ending. Can you just, both describe your thought processes? How fast was your heart racing? All of the above during that ending.
So when I was watching Hydra stream, I was starting the final escape, and I was like, okay, Hydra's gonna not mess up, he's not gonna die or anything. And then as I start the escape, I look over to the screen, and then I see him at the beginning of the escape, and my heart is just 2-3x what it should be.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Hydra, what was it like from your end?
So for me, okay, so start this off, I normally do not do the fish manipulation at all. So I normally just go directly into the water without waiting. What started this all out was me trying to play it a little bit safer in this hoop and waiting a little bit so that the fish were a little bit more lenient, which caused my bash off of the second fish to hit the ceiling and just send me nowhere.
Oh, that's so
After that
frustrating.
happened, I looked over and saw Richard just starting his escape, and my heart just leapt out of my chest.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, just watching, my heart was racing too. That was one of the most exciting finishes I've ever seen, without a doubt.
I'm still shaking.
What a coincidence.
So on the subject of nerves and heart racing, I want to take it back to a little bit earlier. A lot of this race kind of was, Richard ahead due to some early mistakes from Hydra, but you just kind of kept eating into that lead over and over and over until we saw the lead change at like just after Kuro cutscene. So Hydra, did you feel like that was a catch up that you could make because of your movement, or were you worried at that point? What was your mindset for that part of the race?
I was pretty worried. I have not been consistent at the swamp entry at all. I don't entirely know what's up with that, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I just have my positioning off a little bit, and it's off what I'm used to, and it just results in missing a lot of the time. I was really worried about that going into it, but the first try happened, and after that I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to catch up to Richard.
I definitely noticed your movement looked a lot cleaner after that. Like, it just looked like you'd found your footing, and I think that reflected in your play quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go over to Richard. You mentioned in your miscellaneous stats, Richard, that you had recently got to 100 wins on Tetris 99. So now that you're eliminated, is full-time Tetris play in your future, or are you continuing with anything Ori related?
Oh, I still want the 30, followed by eventually, once I learn new strats, I want to become the best Richard in Ori. So at field, the name is Richard, and so I'm gonna have to go for that still. Though it is not over just yet. I probably will play some Tetris though later.
Well, you may not be the best Richard, but according to my notes, you are the coolest Richard. So keep that one in mind.
Thanks, Loopy.
So, the first big major thing of this race, Hydra, was the Death Gauntlet death. Did that shake you up at all? Did it take a bit to recover from that, going straight back to the dash tray?
A little bit, yeah. After that happened, I just felt more motivated to try to not make any mistakes. Which the double jump keystone door, that hero store there, I messed up a little bit. But after that, I felt I played really well and was pretty happy with it all.
For sure, you definitely seem to get back to your smooth, normal movements after that. But I believe that led to a leads change with Richard holding the leads. You were watching the restream, so you were probably aware of that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
I was.
This didn't. You were just concentrating your own movement, making sure you get back into the groove, and confident that you'd make it back.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next lead change would have been unfortunate for Richard. The spider and Spider Sack decided to troll you a little bit and not give you the nicest of shots. Do you have any insight on that one?
Yeah, so I was peeking over to Hydra's screen throughout the race periodically just to see how much he was catching up, because obviously he was going to be catching up to me. And what ended up happening during that point, there I am grabbing the energy cell like a normal human being, and I look over to the screen, I'm like, oh man, Hydra's catching up to me. What am I gonna do? And apparently my hands decided to not do the normal movement that I do there. And yeah, so
the woes of watching the stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say you fell prey to the classic speedrunning blunder of looking at chat during an important trick. Well, anyway, so GG's to both you guys. I think pretty much nobody will disagree that was one of the best endings to an all skills race ever. So congratulations to both of you, and GG particularly to Hydra. Loopy, what have we got coming up next, Ori race-wise?
Oh, we have plenty of races coming up. Straight after this one, we have Infinite versus Clean. 1 hour after that, we've got Vulagin versus Tass Snoop, and one after that, we've got Elo Gemini versus some guy named Loopy Loo. They're all on this channel, so you can just sit back, relax, no need to go anywhere, just chill out and enjoy the show.
Yeah, good time for a bathroom break. We've got about 15 minutes until the next race, but do not go anywhere. We're going to see more races, hopefully just as exciting as this one. Loopy, thanks so much for commentating with me. Richard, Hydra, thanks so much for racing and putting on a great show. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Truck, and thank you, Restreamer. We love you all. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned.